Okay, everyone. So in this video, we will talk about events and also how this keyword stands in relation to HTML elements. But to start off, we'll talk about events. Okay, so what is an event? An event is really anything that takes place in the DOM that fires off a certain code block. So for example, when you click a button and something happens, maybe some text is showing, or maybe you get some data from a server, or maybe you hide an image, or basically anything. Maybe you hover over something and it shows. Maybe you take your hover away from it and it's not showing anymore. All of those things that triggers these type of different behaviors and actions, those are called events. And the most common event in JavaScript is called the onClick event. And events we put on HTML elements. And to start displaying this in a more practical way, I will start writing a little bit of code. So I navigate over back here to my index.html, and what I will do here is that I will go down here under my hello world div here, which we created earlier, and here I will create a button element. This button is gonna say click me, and this button will now take an event handler, and this event handler will be the onClick event. And you write this basically like this. You write onClick and then equals, not like that, like this, and then equals. And in here you specify what you want to happen when the button is clicked. And usually what we do here is that we want to run some sort of function. And what I will do now is that I will just save this, and I will go back here and I will create this function which is gonna fire when we click this button. Okay. And what I want to do then is simply to create a function. So we'll call const output array and equals, and I will use arrow function syntax here. Equals this, so this is a function, and what happens when this function gets called is that it's gonna take this array up here of cars that we have created previously and print the cars out here on the screen below the button. If we refresh now, we'll see that the button appears here. Click me, it says there. So this cars array I want to appear under here. And as you remembered before, when we want JavaScript to appear on the HTML page, we need to access the element that we wanted to our JavaScript content to appear within. So for example here where it says hello world Christian, we created this div up here with the ID of output hello world, and then we used the document.getElement by ID method and then sets the inner HTML of that element to this hello world variable. So what I will do here, right below this button that we created, is that I will create a new div, and I will give this div an ID that will be called output cars array. And I will save that. Then back in here, I will simply go to my output array function here, and I will say document.get element by ID, and then what we called this div here, what ID we gave it, output cars array. We'll copy that. I'll paste it in here. And then I will set the inner HTML of this element to cars, which is up here. So what this function does now, output array, is that it identifies the HTML element output cars array and sets the inner HTML of this element to the cars array, which we have created up here before. So now I save this, and well, as of now, nothing is going to happen when we click this because we haven't assigned anything to the onClick event here. So what we need to do now is that with this onClick event that we created on our button here, we need to call this function output array. I will actually rename it to output cars array. So I need to call this function from my onClick event, and the way I do this is here within the onClick that we created on the button. I simply type in output cars array and add the parentheses to declare that I'm calling a function. And then I save this and I refresh. We get the alert message and we click the button, and there we go. Volvo, BMW, Mercedes. The cars array gets outputted once we click the button. So when we click on this button for the onClick event, it calls the output cars array, which is here, the function output cars array, and then it sets the inner HTML of the element output cars array to cars. And this output cars array corresponds with this output cars array ID. So to make it a little bit more clear, so with this element, so we can see that it's empty from the start, but when we call this function, it will set the content or the inner HTML of this element to the cars array, which we can see is up here. And I'll save that. Apart from just these event handlers and calling functions through events, I also mentioned that we were gonna discuss the this keyword, which we have discussed in previous videos regarding objects, but now in the context of HTML elements. And when you call the this keyword on an HTML element, then this corresponds to the HTML element that received the actual event. So, for example, if I would call the this keyword here, while I fire off this onClick event on this button, then this would correspond to this button element. And to clarify this, I will put an onClick event on this this array div here, where we output the cars. OnClick. And this onClick element will just say this dot style. We access that's to access the style of this element so that we can manipulate basically the styling or CSS. This dot style dot display, which is a CSS attribute, and we will set this equal to none. So what this says that is that when I click this div, this one here, this div, I will set the display style of this element to none, which means that this element won't show. So this is the same as setting display none in a CSS file. It's the same as calling this style method here. So I will save this and I will refresh. Get the alert message. I click this, and now when I click this one, it will set that it will on this element here, this div, set the style to display none. So when I click here, this should disappear, and it did. So that's how the this keyword works on HTML elements. It refers to the HTML element that receives an event. And therefore, when I call this on this element, when this event is fired, it will manipulate the style of this div here that we have created.